Jerusalem, Israel, lived there for close to 2 years, and teaching, and then taught in the uptown area. Then decided to be the eldest intern, unpaid, for WTTW, and then became editor of a local newspaper. But I always wanted to write. In 5th grade, I wrote Grandma Banana and Her Magic Eraser, and that got me. And, but I never took a writing course. I took one course in short story writing, and that was it. But I wanted to write. And so, as life goes, I heard of OCWW and went to it. And I am somewhat shy. My husband would disagree, perhaps, but he's political. I stand next to him and I smile and I'm charming and say, hello, how are you? And try and remember people's names. But I'm pretty shy, and it was daunting to come to such a large group and see so many people who all wanted to write. And they were all shapes and sizes. Look around the room. And I went, and I kept going, and every week gives you structure, because every week a different expert tells you something else about how to write a book. And so I learned, and sometimes it was interesting and sometimes not so interesting, but I always got nuggets. And the other thing that I got that's the most important thing of all, and perhaps Renee would agree, is we have critique groups. Now, criticize is not a bad word. When we have critique groups, you get into a group. Mine right now has 5, and Renee used to be in it. We wish she would come back, but
They
she's
threw me out.
she's too good for us now. We helped her publish her first couple of books, and then poof, she was gone. But you get to write. We meet once a month, and the week before we send our month's submission to everybody, and we write critiques, which are productive suggestions on how you can improve your work. And we meet. Now we're Zooming, and we may never see each other in person again. But I find it extremely helpful. We helped Renee on her first chapter of her first book. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, you helped me on 3 books.
With your main character. And just last Monday, they were helping me. I usually have 2 twisting plots. And I realized, oh my God, I only have 1 plot. It's twisting, but twisting in the wind. And my group reminded me, where's your other plot? And so that helps tremendously. And OCWW is responsible for that. One year, a group of us went to an empty theater and read excerpts from our submissions. You were there then. And that was fantastic, because it showed people in a constructive way. You know, perhaps you might want to stand up straighter instead of slump. Perhaps you want to emote. Perhaps you would like to enunciate instead of mumble. These are things from OCWW. And if that's not enough, there are always cookies and coffee at break time, which makes it worth it. But I found my publisher through Lori Rader. She just won the Agatha Christie Award and is a wonderful person. I was trying to get to Sarah Paretsky and ask her about an agent or a publishing house. And she was up on a stage and I was down on the ground, and Lori's leg was in view, so I pulled at her pants down. I want to get to Sarah Paretsky to ask her these questions, and she said, wait, I know a rabbi. And this rabbi publishes books, and it was exactly the kind of book that I was trying to write. Mysteries a la Agatha Christie. And I went to that publisher, and he took me on, and the second book will be published shortly. and the third one is done, I just have to get permission. At any rate, none of this would have happened without OCWW, so I owe it everything, really. Thank you.
And that brings us to Sandy. Be patient with Sandy. She had children on a field trip just before coming.
They weren't children,
She's-
they were college students.
Oh, they were college, so they were smoking dope in the woods. Sandy, pick up the gauntlet.
So I'm Sandy Cabillas, and I actually live in Waukegan, so to be part of OCWW, you can tell like I'm pretty dedicated to this group. So I actually work as an environmental consultant, and I also work as a College of Lake County as an adjunct instructor with their environmental biology department. So I'm used to science stuff. And a little bit about me is when I was like 10 years old, I remember I had a report that was due the next day, and I was crying and yelling through the house, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't write something, I have no imagination. And to tell you the truth, I still feel that way. So I go to OCWW, and I'm always amazed at these people who create these worlds and all this fiction, because I always need to use something from my past, from something. I'm writing a memoir right now, and most of the stories I've written have been something that I have experienced myself, because remember, I have no imagination. So so a lot of people have things that happen to them, and they always think, I'd really like to write a book about that sometime. Well, I had such an experience. It happened in the early 1990s. I had a dog, a Springer Spaniel puppy. When she was 9 months old, she fell off a cliff and landed 75 feet down and survived and broke her leg in a bunch of places. And 2 veterinarians said, amputate the leg. And I said, no, I want to save the leg. I want the dog to be fairly normal. So she got a bone graft and a couple of surgeries, and she was pretty much okay, and we took her a lot of places. She went hiking, cross-country skiing with us, whitewater canoeing. I mean, we did all sorts of things with this dog. But then 8 years later, she got osteosarcoma, and that leg had to come off, and then she became paralyzed. And so it was just a lot that happened, and we did a lot of things that people wouldn't have done back in the 1990s, like we bought the dog a hot tub. So that she could exercise her leg. Of course, we used it too. But it was my husband's idea. It's like, let's buy a hot tub and that'll help her exercise her leg. Then when she got osteosarcoma, I took her to a rehab place and spent lots of money. And that's actually how I became a college instructor, because I needed extra money to pay for the dog. And so when she died, I really wanted to write her story. I'm like, I really need to write this. And I wrote it down in about a dozen pages. It was all summary, and I go, this is awful. I just don't know how to write. You know, I write professionally as a scientist, so I know how to describe things in scientific terms, but to write with dialogue and description and settings, I was lost. I struggled with every sentence. So I need help, I need to do something. So I signed up for a couple of classes from colleges, local colleges, and through Writer's Digest, and those help, but they focus on certain aspects and they last 4 or 6 weeks. But I need something more, and then I discovered OCWW, and like I said, I was pretty dedicated to come down from Waukegan to Winnetka on Thursday mornings when I was supposed to be working, and I would just kind of arrange my work schedule so I could try to go to any of these meetings. And I just got, I was very impressed with the caliber of the people there. They would ask such technical questions. Sometimes I'm still like, wow, where are they pulling this stuff out of? But and after being there for like 7 years, so. But what I really got out of there is that I had people review my manuscript and my first chapter, and they gave me lots of advice. And then there was the critique groups. Actually, my first critique group was with Bobby Ruby, and she had like a summer program. And we'd get together and share 5 pages and talk about things. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't really like to share my work. It has to be a lot better before I can share it. But until you have other people read it and tell you what's needed, you don't know what you really need. So it really takes like a village to work together and get a book really written. So anyway, I had that critique group for a few years, and now I'm in the critique group with Susan here, and we've met for a couple of years, and my book is getting really close to getting done now. Now I'm trying to cut it down some, and with any luck, Tina will be my agent. But I need to get my word count down. I got a little bit too wordy in some areas, but OCWW has helped me a lot just by giving me all the background information and the value of the critique group and manuscript submissions that have been reviewed.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great that Sandy brings up the teamwork aspect of this and the value of critique groups. One of the sayings that I bandy about a lot, somebody said to me a long time ago, is that as a writer, you can never read your work for the first time, so you can never understand what the reader's experience is going to be. And when you submit it to somebody who can read it for the first time and articulate what's good and bad about it, it's very valuable. Let's talk about the Turning Points experience, and I'm going to ask Joyce to lead us off again. Just 2 or 3 minutes on, how valuable or what was valuable to you, if anything, and what you got from it.
Well, I have not been in critique groups in off campus. I joined another writing group that my friend Nancy over here is in on Wednesdays called The Writers, which I found out about through off campus, but we concentrate much more on critiquing, but the combination of that and off campus, it's a nice match. I spend a lot of time talking about writing. I hadn't been involved in the anthology process until this one, and a couple more have been out, but I had a short story, and my short story is also about, it actually is about the refugee family that I sponsored and what happened to them in Cambodia. I think one of the really wonderful things is that I found a place to get my story published and out there. It takes a long time to get a story out. But I didn't want it to just go out and be in, just sort of a run-of-the-mill. So what I was really impressed about with this process was the professionalism that Renee and Peter, who's not here.
He's back.
Oh, Peter, you are there. I haven't seen you in so long with your mask on.
Here's a letter from him.
Peter helped me so much with my story too. I was in a critique group for a short time. We start with critique groups. We didn't spend a whole lot of time in the critique group. I think I worked more with Peter with my story than anything, but I was very impressed, not only with the professionalism, but also with all the time that Renee and Peter and everyone who was involved with turning this out put into it, with no reward except that this was going to be something that would go out, and that everybody who started writing something for this would be included in it. It wouldn't be just all of the people who had all these writing credits. It could be people who had never published a story before, but they would be helped to bring the story up to a place where it could be included and read. And one of the fun things that I've had is I've given this as, like birthday presents and so forth to, my family and friends. It's just been fun to have something really much more personal to give somebody, to say, here, this is something that I've been included in. And also, when you're writing a novel, there's not a lot of instant reward, believe me. I just finished the sequel to this novel, which I'm trying to get to Tina now. And believe me, it's been several years, so this is like a lot more instant gratification than writing a novel, so that's what I got out of it.
Yes, I definitely agree. I mean, one thing that was interesting is I find myself sometimes in several different critique groups, so I always feel like I'm like cheating on one group and not the other. But I still do my work, and I had to like come out to my critique group from OCWW because we had been together through a class with Esther Hirschenhorn, which was picture book, and then all of a sudden, I'm immersed in this novel. So when we worked on A Reason to Be Here, my group was actually sharing stories. We weren't like Zooming online, but we were sharing our stories. We would email them back and forth and do that, and then do different versions. And so we were kind of online with that. But then when we did for the Turning Points, we actually were in person, and then we couldn't be in person. So I have the memory of being at the Wilmette Library upstairs in this little room, and then the world shut down. I mean, that was it. And so, but the process, that was our last meeting. I think actually we had 2 meetings in Fred's, that he had welcomed Kathy and Jason Levicki and I into his household. But I agree with what Joyce is saying, is everything is highly professional, the feedback is invaluable, and any writing that you do complements any other writing that you're doing in any genre. And so I think all of the workshops and the feedback, that is very helpful. Mine always felt kind of like narrative nonfiction, so I'm so happy, Renee, that you keep calling it a short story because it was foreign to me. I was working in very short form, haiku or poetry, or very long form, a novel, and so this was kind of the happy medium in between. I also met another woman that we were sharing our novels informally also, so there was like a side critique group going and teaching full time and raising 4 children, and I don't know how I did it, but I do a lot of writing in my head. I commute, I live on the north side and commute to the south side. So I am always writing things down, but everything has been very professional, and I've truly enjoyed the experience being part of OCWW. Too many W's. we'll give it something else.
If somebody's counting, they don't belong here. Susan.
I wanted to say the Turning Points was special in the sense that the title really means something, Turning Points. You were to write not about anything in the whole world, but you were to write along a particular theme, turning points in your life or someone's life. And that meant that people wrote about anything they wanted, but it all had to be on the same theme. And that made it fascinating. When you read through these stories, they're all different, but they're all the same. And that's what I enjoyed about it. Also, and I remember saying this to children when we would create books in the classes that I taught, and they would see their names there at the top and their little stories, because we worked with the Sun-Times and the Chicago Defender on children writing stories. When you write in a journal, especially if you haven't written and published before, you can say, you are someone. You can say, I am published. And it's a great sense of accomplishment. It's really fantastic. Also, you're part of a many-stepped effort. And along with that comes professionalism. But if you don't want to write a story, there are different parts to putting a journal together, and you can work on those parts and gain without paying Western or anybody else several $1,000s for a course. You can learn hands-on experience how to put together a journal, so you should start charging.
I'm too old.
And the last thing is, I enjoyed my writing group. I didn't know these people from Adam. We ended up having tea and crumpets together, or oatmeal cookies, and